Yep.
Yeah, Chris, they're going to start. They're going to be here any second here.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll just kind of hang out. You guys just want to hang out for a second.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. That's fine, Paul. That's great.
Hey, Chris, I'm Solomon and Ty. I'm on our way in right now.
Great, thank you.
Next person is going to be down.
That's great, guys. They're on their way in. It'll be 45 minutes. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Great, Paul. How are you?
Very good. So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Hamburg. This is Dr. Chris Jones.
Hi, good to meet you.
So, this is a technology that we're starting to implement. We already have this at Centennial also. All the different images that can be used or needed so that we can all be put in one screen. So what you see here today is exactly what they're seeing in that OR or in the hospital place. But Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you so you can chat with it and give us your thoughts.
Great, thanks, Paul. Dr. Hamburg, welcome here. We're in Centennial Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. This is the first HCA hospital. We're right by HCA headquarters. And this connection that we have with Paul and the Medtronic team and the Hospital of the Future is really demonstrative of the type of partnership we're trying to foster between Medtronic and HCA. I read a quote from you where you said that you wanted to strengthen FDA's policies to allow Americans access to the latest technology and to do that in novel ways. And we think that this certainly represents that type of thinking. The connection that we have here is going to allow, if we're able to prove this pilot, is going to allow for Medtronic to deliver expertise at less experienced centers so that an American in rural America that's getting a pacemaker will have access to some of the best experts at Medtronic. And then also we're hoping can connect to centers like ours, bigger urban centers, that can allow a hand when a surgeon or a technician at another facility is having a tough time. The other thing, in addition to Medtronic connecting with us, is that we're going to use this as a springboard to allow this hospital, Centennial, to connect with other HCA facilities and then also other hospitals in our area so that our local hospitals will have that same kind of access to doctors and healthcare professionals here that they might actually get from our hospital by traveling here. As you can imagine, it's pretty tough for a lot of patients to travel even 100 miles if they're used to living in a more rural site.
Alright, so you explain all that we see here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was an EP study one of my partners just finished, and in the upper left-hand corner is an intracardiac echo. Right in the middle of the screen, the chamber that's pumping is the left atrium in and out with the aorta. It's kind of a cross-sectional view, so we're seeing both there. Below that, in the bottom left-hand corner, is fluoroscopy. There's a catheter that's in the coronary sinus and then catheters in the right atrium. There's also an intracardiac echo probe, which is giving us that image. The middle screen in the upper is a mapping system, and so once we start our pilot with Medtronic, what we'll have there instead of a mapping screen will be the Medtronic programming screen, so that if I'm putting in a pacemaker or a defibrillator, or one of my partners is, somebody in Minneapolis, I believe in the very room you're in, will be able to control our programmer. Now, at Centennial, that's not that big of a deal because we have representatives from Medtronic that live right in Nashville, obviously. But there are a lot of hospitals, even 20 miles from here, that don't have representatives in their area. It can take quite some time for somebody to get there. So the ability of Medtronic to provide that kind of expertise on demand and in real time is going to greatly facilitate patients' throughput through the different labs. The other thing is that the experts that get brought in, the specialists that get brought in from Medtronic really help our cases. And some of them, as you can imagine, are more experienced than others. So one of the things we hope that Medtronic will be able to do will be to set up a command center of some of their best specialists that can help the rural sites, so that if somebody's seeing something that they haven't seen before, they'll be able to get that help. The last two things on the screen are electrograms. That's the bottom middle screen is intracardiac electrograms. We removed a lot of the catheters because we're done with the study, and to the right is a review screen. So this is pretty typical of what we see in our EP lab here.
So the engagement with Medtronic personnel would be mainly a training process, but then you'd want to be able to access them.
Well, yeah. So the pilot. Yeah, the pilot that we're working on is right now when we put in if I put a pacemaker in somebody, there's a Medtronic representative that comes into the room, and as I put down the wires into the heart, they test the wires and make sure that they're working appropriately. Furthermore, a lot of times they lend their expertise to me. They'll say, hey, listen, look at your x-ray. Is that really where you want that wire? And then they'll do things like program the pacemaker specific to that patient. And so they provide a lot of support for our case. Now, if a surgeon an hour from here, and an example in the Middle Tennessee area would be at a Dixon hospital, if a surgeon out there needs to put in a pacemaker urgently, it may take an hour to 2 hours for a Medtronic representative to get to that hospital. And so then he's putting in the pacemaker without that expertise. And Medtronic will tell you that 70% of their pacemakers are put in by implanters who put in fewer than 20 per year. That's a very inexperienced group. You know, to put that into perspective, my partner and I may put in 200 pacemakers a year. So it's a big difference in just the familiarity with the products. And so a surgeon that's an hour from here, for him to be able to call Medtronic and say, hey, listen, you're seeing exactly what I'm seeing on my screen. Can you please program the pacemaker just like you would if you were here? Can you test the wires that are now in the person's heart just like you would if you were here? Is a big help to that surgeon. For our own center, because we have geographic availability of reps, it's not quite as important. But for centers anywhere outside of the major cities in the United States, it's a big deal.
So we have that used for training, or like used for immediate consultation, programming, immediate referring to immediate start to see the physician to really deal with the proctor. So it's a proctor is knowledge. Right now, we find all the proctor cases, we could have rather for just saying, look, this is where you want to put that thing. That's all. That's what they do in the exam. So this is a really good way to do a robust proctor. The great advantage is here. This is good for this. Right now, this is just we rely on our expertise. This way we get to it's easy not. So it's actually safe for the
I heard a little bit about the proctoring. It's a great point, and one of the things we're trying to set up with this type of technology with Medtronic is a network of electrophysiologists, physicians, and labs across the country. We've already connected this lab to one in Rome, Georgia, and we're working on one in Florida and Alaska. And then we'll expand it from there. The idea being that if somebody at another center comes up with a new cool technique, they can ask me to watch it, and I can watch it in real time on their monitor. Instead of having to fly to their center and take a day and a half of work, I can take an hour and have a discussion with them and see how they do it, and then be able to immediately apply it here. So we're really excited about that aspect of this technology as well.
Question for the FDA would be the reason why we want to Steve also mentioned we want to be able to remotely program devices, and so it's going to be an issue with the FDA on the safety of doing these things through the cloud or distance. Obviously, it's really that's really for the research industry just to understand the value of the program. So again, what he's suggesting that we'd like to do is be able to use this kind of system to go into Dixon and see if we to hopefully program the one actually market process. With people who are experts in here, I'm going to start planning for the new China because it's where people may not be able to do all the things. So we have to have the ability to remotely interact with devices and
It's a pleasure to meet you, and please come down and visit us sometime.
I've never been to Nashville.
Oh, it's a great place. You'd love it.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got someone who's waiting for.
Good.
Good.